beginning, everything was perfect. There was no darkness or evil, nor pain or fear. Only the peace of God filled every corner of heaven. At his side were powerful angels, Michael and Gabriel, guardians and messengers who fulfilled the divine command with absolute faithfulness. And there was Lucifer, an angel of incomparable beauty, entrusted with heavenly worship. But even in the midst of perfection, something began to darken his light. Satan, the fall of Lucifer. Heaven remained in its absolute peace, a peace so deep that it needed no defense. Everything had its order, everything had its purpose. Each light shone with a perfect and continuous radiance. Beside the throne of God was Lucifer, the one in charge of worship. This angel belonged to the seraphim, one of the highest and most powerful ranks in heaven, and his presence was both imposing and majestic. His wings shone with silver and golden reflections, and his inner light blended with the glory of the Creator, highlighting his role as the guide of heavenly praise. He was glorious, powerful, and beautiful beyond all comparison among celestial beings. His presence illuminated the eternal halls of the heavenly castle with a clean, steady radiance. He had been placed near the throne not only to contemplate the glory of God, but to lead the music and worship of heaven. When Lucifer raised his hands, thousands of voices obeyed. When he bowed his head, the choirs sank into reverence. When he opened his lips, the music seemed to touch the deepest part of all beings in the heavenly kingdom. He walked among the other angels, but he was not like them. Among all the angels, Michael had the firmness of a living sword. Gabriel carried messages like lightning. The seraphim burned while covering their faces before the holiness of the Most High. But Lucifer possessed a beauty that drew even the gaze of the immortals. There was in him a natural authority, a silent weight that made many follow him before receiving an order. He was one of the few who could approach the throne and speak directly before God. At first, that closeness produced pride in him. It was his greatest honor. He approached as a perfect servant, as the Prince of Worship, though it passed through him with a force that no other could match. One day, after leading his song so loudly, Lucifer advanced while singing his praise to God. Every note that came from his lips seemed to rise and blend with the light of heaven, resonating to the ends of the celestial kingdom. For several minutes, his eyes remained fixed on the throne. He observed every light, every being orbiting around the Creator, and a thought began to sprout in his mind. Why must every being worship him? The question, though silent, began to eat away at his mind. With each moment, the certainty of the absolute obedience of the angels around him made him feel an emptiness he had not perceived before. His wings trembled slightly as he directed his gaze with greater intensity. Little by little, his body began to move on its own, away from the throne room. Some angels perceived it immediately. Silent whispers traveled through the air, and Michael, attentive and concerned, flew after him with determination. "What is happening to you? What occurred? Why did you not continue in worship?" Michael asked, with a firm voice but filled with concern. Lucifer, with his gaze lowered and a trace of shadow in his light, answered in a murmur, "Not everything is like the light. As he continued advancing, dominated by his thoughts, he observed the distant ground, and his mind revolved around ideas of freedom, greatness, and questioning the authority he had always obeyed. It was then that he heard a deep, clear voice, yet full of strength and serenity. May your light be greater than your darkness. Why must every being worship him? The question, though silent, began to eat away at his mind. With each passing instant, the certainty of the absolute obedience of the angels around him made him feel an emptiness he had not perceived before. His wings trembled slightly as he directed his gaze with greater intensity. Little by little, his body began to move on its own, away from the throne room. Some angels perceived it immediately. Silent whispers traveled through the air, and Michael, attentive and concerned, flew after him with determination. What is happening to you? What happened? Why did you not continue in the worship? Michael asked with a firm voice, but filled with concern. Lucifer, with his gaze lowered and a trace of shadow in his light, answered in a murmur, "Not everything is like the light." As he continued advancing, dominated by his thoughts, he watched the distant ground, and his mind revolved around ideas of freedom, greatness, and questioning the authority he had always obeyed. It was then that he heard a deep, clear voice, but full of strength and serenity. May your light be greater than your darkness. The sound of God's voice pierced through his mind, a reminder of his power and of the light that ran through his interior. Lucifer remained motionless for an instant, feeling how the vibration of that word touched the deepest part of his being, igniting at the same time the spark of pride and the seed of unease that he could not ignore. His thoughts mixed with the music that still resonated in his memory, with the reverberation of heaven, and with the force that emanated from the throne. And as he walked slowly, his mind began to weave plans, questions, and desires that could no longer be silenced. The peace of heaven remained intact, but within him, a shadow began to arise. A few steps from the throne, Gabriel watched him. Not with suspicion, but with that vigilance proper to one who had been formed to protect order. During one of the songs, Lucifer held a pause longer than he should have. It was a brief instant, almost invisible, but Gabriel noticed it. "Your voice has strayed for an instant," said Gabriel when the song ended. Lucifer looked around. The flames of the seraphim, the circles of light of the heavenly thrones, and his own face were reflected, beautiful, radiant, almost impossible to look at. "Not my voice, my thought," he answered. Michael and Gabriel remained firm. The light of the Most High touched their armor like contained fire, then returned to the thought that was given to you. "Lucifer, you should watch your thoughts. What now seems harmless can lead you away from your purpose and bring dark consequences in the future," said Michael with a calm voice, while the light of the throne shone softly over his wings. "Not everything that shines, nor everything that seems good, is right," Lucifer whispered, looking toward the ground with his shoulders slightly fallen. "Wisdom is not an enemy, but a guide. Ignoring it is what destroys," Michael continued, taking a step closer, his eyes full of serenity and firmness. "Wisdom is the real problem," Lucifer murmured, with a trace of disdain and fascination. "There's always something more, something no one sees." Those words should have been enough, but this time they fell inside Lucifer like a door closing. For a time, calm returned, or seemed to return. Lucifer returned to leading the choirs with even greater perfection. No one could have accused him of any fault. His movements were exact. His voice was clean. His presence continued to fill heavenly worship with order. But the more perfect his outward obedience became, the more intense his inner struggle grew. In the high spaces where no sound entered without command, Lucifer contemplated the light that flowed from the throne. He saw it extend over everything that existed, touching every angelic order, filling every court, every height. Everything depended on that light. Everything lived because God sustained it. And then the thought returned, stronger. What would happen if that glory could dwell in him without having to return to the throne? What would happen if his own light were the greatest? Why had he been created so great, so beautiful, so powerful, if his destiny was to bow like all the others? That question did not come alone. Lucifer saw his reflection. He was no longer beside the throne. He saw himself on an immense height. He felt above everyone. The angels did not look at him as the director of worship, but as the center of it. Lucifer felt great, imposing and powerful, a light that radiated over all the angels who surrounded him. His humility, which had once kept him close to the throne, began to give way, and pride began to grow in his heart like a silent flame. With each thought, something inside him began to perceive that not everything was in order, that something did not fit within the perfect meaning of heavenly harmony. Little by little, that unease began to corrode his mind, like a persistent whisper that promised freedom, but brought with it shadow and doubt. Heaven returned to its stillness. The halls remained calm. No angels seemed to have seen what had happened, but Lucifer could no longer tear that image from his mind. He did not know whether it had been a warning, a temptation, or a truth hidden within his greatness. And that doubt was more dangerous than any certainty. When Lucifer returned to the throne, the angels were already gathered. They all stopped when they perceived his presence. A reverent silence passed through the hall, and the light of the throne illuminated every face as a sign of respect. It was a solemn moment. God had something to announce, a message that would resonate throughout all heaven. I am going to create, said the voice of the Most High, deep and firm. Something that has never existed before. The greatest creation I have conceived. Life beyond my hands, a work that will surpass everything that has existed until now. The angels listened in silence, amazed and expectant. Gabriel and Michael exchanged glances. Containing their emotion and reverence. Only Lucifer felt something different. A growing unease, a pressure in his chest that made him question what he had just heard. Without saying a word, Lucifer stepped away from the group. With firm steps, he began to walk through the halls of the heavenly white castle, each step softly resonating among the columns of light. The idea of that creation etched itself into his mind. If they, the angels, were the most perfect and powerful creation until now, what could be greater than them? The question consumed him, and the peace of heaven seemed to distort around him. The admiration of the other angels could not distract him. Something inside him stirred with force. Michael arrived behind him, walking through the heavenly corridor, but keeping his distance, allowing Michael to take the initiative. "Why have you left the hall?" asked Michael, with a firm voice but filled with concern. Lucifer did not answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the light that passed through the windows of the castle, while his mind revolved around the divine announcement. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, almost a whisper. "I do not agree with that creation." Michael observed him, understanding that Lucifer's unease was not trivial. There in the corridor of marble and light, the beginning of something that no one else began to feel something strange regarding Lucifer's attitude. A silent unease took hold of him. Lucifer's usual serenity seemed disturbed, as if hidden thoughts were beginning to germinate in his mind. From that moment on, Michael decided to watch his decisions more closely, paying attention to every gesture, every look, trying to anticipate what he was planning or what he still did not dare to say. Lucifer already occupied a place of privilege in heaven, a seat close to the throne of God that reflected his glory and power among the angels. Over time, he began to notice something he had not perceived so clearly before. All the beings around him could obey him without questioning his commands, and that absolute obedience began to feed his pride. The angels of every hierarchy bowed before him, ready to fulfill any order with impeccable precision. His gestures were observed, his words executed instantly, and each of his actions seemed to trigger reverence and absolute attention. This certainty of absolute power made his heart swell with a feeling of greatness, a light of his own that radiated authority and dominion. However, the more that pride grew, the more he began to notice a silent emptiness inside him. Having everyone at his disposal, the unconditional obedience of the angels did not fill what was beginning to stir in his mind. The light that surrounded him and defined him as one of the most glorious beings in heaven began to reflect unease and questioning. Every angel who looked at him, every gesture of submission, reminded him that external power could not control the internal unease that was beginning to corrode his thought. Little by little, Lucifer understood that his pride and the admiration of others, though powerful, were like a mirror returning the silent question to him. Is having everything at my disposal enough to fill this emptiness that grows in my heart? And so, while the angels remained attentive to his every movement, Lucifer faced the paradox of his existence. A glorious, powerful, and revered being, whose inner light was beginning to become unsettling and turbulent, an omen of a darkness that did not yet dare to manifest itself completely. Lucifer withdrew toward a silent height, from where the still formless abysses could be seen. There were no choirs there, nor immediate orders. Only a motionless immensity, waiting for the voice of God. The word of the Most High still resonated inside him, but beside it, another voice had been born. Lower, more his own. It did not deny God, not yet. It did not openly challenge the throne, not yet. It only repeated an idea that became firmer with every beat of his light. Serving was not enough. I was not created to serve. I never was. I do not want to kneel or obey. I do not want to be a simple guardian of the throne. What I desire, what I have always desired, is to be like him. To sit on the throne he occupies, to feel the weight of absolute power, to contemplate the immensity of heaven from above, from the very center of divine majesty. I am a perfect being, an angel of incomparable light and strength. My power is pure, my mind clear, my will unbreakable. And yet, here I am, following orders, limited by something that should never have contained me. Is greatness measured by obedience? Or by vision, by the courage to claim what by right should belong to the highest among the angels? Chapter 2. The Seed of Rebellion. Hello. Lucifer walked among the light of heaven with a firm and determined step. His mind was clear. His as a spark of unease, a silent doubt that had slipped into the perfection of heavenly harmony. That the established hierarchy was not enough to contain the greatness that lived within him. At first his words were subtle, barely a whisper among the lower-ranking angels, an echo that blended with the music of worship. Why must we accept without questioning? He said in whispers. Ray of light is our essence. Why remain always beneath the throne? Why not aspire to more, to understand the power that resides within us and claim it as our own? Some angels looked at him with admiration, others with distrust. The seed of doubt was slowly planted in their hearts. Brothers, the light that illuminates us, the light of God, is not the light we deserve, Lucifer said firmly. We deserve a light that Like many Ugandans, I am one of the victims of the fidelity bid scam. I have lost millions of shillings within a very short period of time. It is a loss that is difficult to describe because it is not just money that disappeared. It was hope. It was dreams and months of sacrifice. Almost everyone who joined had a dream. Everyone imagined paying school fees without struggling. We planned to buy land, build decent homes, buy cars, expand our businesses, support our parents and family, and to give our children a better future. Some even resigned themselves to believing that their financial breakthrough had finally come. We had budgets. We had timelines, we had expectations. We genuinely believed that our lives were about to change through this online scam business. Yes, a few people were fortunate enough to make good money before everything collapsed. But many of us were not. Ngenda kuzaayo ko mu mwaka 1882 oggwanga la Italy. Mu maka agamu omwana omulenzi yazaalibwa. Ng'oyinza okugamba amaka gaali middle class. Jajja was a businessman, n'afa, omutabani n'asikira ssente. Omutabani mu kaseera kano azadde omwana omulenzi. Omwana ono akula afuuka omuvubuka naye nga yeegomba nnyo, ng'ayagala life ya luxury, engoye ez'ebbeeyi, ebyokunywa eby'ebbeeyi. Ekyennaku oba unfortunately taata afa, omwana ono asikira ssente si nnyingi, afuna share ku by'obugagga taata bye yalina bye yasikira okuva kwani jjajja. Bamusindika ku university asome, atuuka eyo adda mu luxury, adda mu masappe mu language yaffe, nga yeegomba nnyo, ng'ayagala nnyo obulamu obuli soft. Omwaka ogusooka guyita, ogwokubiri ssente azirya ziggwawo. Graduation etuuka tagraduatinga. Maama ajja ku university alabe mutabani we yamaze okusoma, ng'omutabani ssente yazirya, yazidigidamu. Out of disappointment n'okwagala okuprovinga maama we, mu mwaka 1903 omwana ono oba omuvubuka ono mu kaseera ako muvubuka asalawo n'agamba kanve mu Italy ngende mu America, the land of opportunities. Alinya eryato from Italy lituuka e Boston mu USA. Just like most immigrants, atandika okubigattagatta, afuna obulimu busente afuna butono nkujukiza muntu wa Masabbe ayagala nnyo life ennungi ebintu bigaana akooye okukola obulimu obutonotono alina dreams ennene ebirooto ebyokubeera omuntu omugagga. He was so ambitious and had big dreams obulimu obutono nga tebumukolera agezaako okukola business zigaana. Eventually he lands in trouble ne bamusiba. Oyinza okugamba okumutwala mu kkomera was a turning moment mu story eno. Afuluma ekkomera after 3 years wayitawo emyezi mitono nnyo addamu okubigattagatta. Mu kaseera kano afeekinga check afeekinga signature bamukwata bamusiba myaka 3. Afuluma agwa mu love amitinga omukyalo ono bwe yafumbirwa yayina taata mu kaseera kano father in law nga na business bintu by'amaato atandika okubikolamu. After a while agenda okukiraba nti ebintu bya shipping bino byaka birimu ssente agezaako okukola ka kampani akake kafa. Naye mu kukola ebyo yakitegeera nti abantu basindika amabaluwa naye ng'okusindika ebbaluwa weetaaga stamp ng'olina okugula stamp ogiteekeko. So muvubuka alaba nti singa ngenda mu nsi endala nga Italy nsobola okugula stamps nenzireeta mu America nenzitunda ku ssente ki ennyingiko. Akigezaako bifa. Naye ate agenda okulaba nti singa nkola kampani nga etunda stamp zino nenfuna ba investor ne bateekamu ssente nsobola okukifunamu. Kyakola akola kampani agigulawo afuna ba investor bateekamu ssente abasuubiza nti otaddemu ogenda kufuna kiralo ogenda kufuna mangu kigenda kwabika teekamu ofune. Indeed people made money bateekamu ne bafuna. Mu kufuna kuno ne bagamba bannaabwe nti omuvubuka yafumbye ekintu teekamu ezizo. So more and more investors came ne bainvestinga mu kampani y'omuvubuka ono.
Want a new cell phone? Then come to this app to find a job. There are part-time and full-time jobs.
Ne bainvestinga mu kampani y'omuvubuka ono. Omuvubuka oyo ali ku screen awo. Mu kaseera ako nga musajja akuze bamuyita Charles Ponzi. Genda gwolabayo bamuggulamu erinnya the Ponzi scheme yoyo. Lwe lugero how he ends up coining or making one of the most popular scams. Ponzi scheme. Before in Europe people used to do it. Unawo company funa ba investors abenjawulo bateekemu ssente as more and more people invest ssente zaba investor abapya ziwe investor yasookamu omugambe business efuna wafuna ajja kudduka agambe banne nti kino kikola. You earning trust, people will come and join. Ponzi scheme. Ponzi scheme ekola etya? You have a Ponzi operator. Ponzi operator ono agenda kusomera ekirimo nti nyina yep bit. Akugambe teekamu ssente bwe zito ogenda kufuna. Indeed you get early investors make money. Nenga ku side wana agula mamotoka na mayumba. Nga ssente z'akozesa ze zaba investor. Abasooka.
Investor abasooka owulira.
It is sustainable. Eventually it crashes.
It is sustainable.
The life cycle of a Ponzi scheme. Kitandika kitya? Nti Shaba ajja n'afumba ekintu kye Fidelity Capital Investment Group ne launching a platform Yepbit. It comes in the country ne launching nefunayo abantu abatonotono. So you get people, they invest money, you pay them. Word of mouth. Ne batandika okwogera. They go and spread the message together one. Founder, recruiter, investors. The more investors you have, the more money you make. Word of mouth. Nti kifuna Shaba ajja kugamba kubira akasimu nti Shaba kino kyenfunye tukikubye tuwedde
ku YouTube yange
so bagenda kufuna rapid growth nti company zikula ku speed
awulya company zikula ku speed
kigambibwa nti omwami ono Charles Ponzi mu company at one point yali akola emitwalo 25 ejja dola mu 1918 so factor in inflation ojja kutegera makers yali akola crazy money zifuna today one
Chino matawali muna Uganda gobide
in actual sense what's happening senezo ziragawa 40% approximately bazikwata nga bwe nagambe ali investor shabi yakisookamu ne bamuwa nagera na spreadinga ekigambo nagamba kifuna 30% the owner agula amamotoka kugamba life improves ajoga 20% kigenda mu marketing olina okukimarketinga naye ate they make it so sad okwegaba bakikweka tebakulaga nti they are marketing it bakulaga nti tebeguya ba customer kisinga kukolera wano kuba recruiters the investors they do the job once you get the first people ojja kukikuba 10% ne bakola cash reserve they make a cash reserve today one ebisera bingi nnyo buli ponzi scheme akasera katuuka nga tokyafuna abantu bapya meaning tokyalina ssente zakuba investor abasooka people begin complaining kyebakola bagezako okukola withdraw so what these guys do they create a situation okujayo ssente zo nga kuzibu nnyo kyebayita withdraw pressure nga kizibu cost ziriwo people try to take their money out eba creating a barriers ez'enjawulo bayinza okugamba ebintu nga letter national ID letter proof of income they make it so difficult mutandikwa kyali kyangu gyekizza eno okukola withdraw becomes a problem ogezako okuzijjayo ne bagamba processing ne bagamba tuwe some other extra documents they create a barrier to make it so hard eventually sente zibagwako reserve eggwawo the 10% and the ship collapses nga tewali kyogenda kukola ojja kwebuuza despite all this lwaki abantu bagenda mu maaso n'okugwa mu buno obutego because I'm sure wandaba sikwekuuza okuwulira ponzi scheme you've heard of it before eggwanga lyaffe Alliance in Motion Global ebintu bingi tuzze tubiraba nga it's obvious it's a ponzi scheme naye people fall for it why si basiru nga video etandika I played with omwami akugamba hope balina essuubi nina loop eyo psychological loop of why to scam a ponzi scheme it begins with greed simbubi greed hope omuntu alina essuubi agamba kankikube mangu nga gawale nkikube nkigale then agenda okulaba ngalo easy profits ntaddemu okusooka after 2 weeks oba after 1 week mfunye dollars $5 $10 I become excited they've earned my trust